The base is dropped on a Saturday morning Power Hour edition of Soccer Down Here. It is October 10th. It's a match day Power Hour with Atlanta United hosting the New York Red Bulls tonight at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Kickoff just after 6 o'clock, so early evening kickoff. Lots of stuff to get into this morning, and you guys can help set the agenda. Tweet at us at Soccer Down Here. Join us on the Twitch pitch. Twitch.tv/SoccerDownHere. You can send us an email, soccerdownhere@gmail. Let us know what is on your mind today. Lots of different things to hop around with today. Badgermon asks on the Twitch pitch, why are Spurs not playing Alex Morgan? Is she injured? And for people who didn't get a chance to see, Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur, FA Women's Super League was on NBCSN this morning. Manchester United got the win. They moved to the top of the table. Alex Morgan has not made her debut yet for Spurs. Tobin Heath and Kristen Press and Sam Mewis and Rose Lavelle have played for their clubs while in the FA Women's Super League. I'm assuming with Morgan, it's just getting back to full fitness. It's been, 3-4 months since she had her first child?
Yeah.
I'm assuming they're just trying to get to a base level of fitness because she hadn't trained much at all with Orlando. I think she had just returned to some training with them before making the move over. So give her a little bit of time. I thought maybe today would have been the day that we would have seen her off the bench. I think it's close, but not quite there just yet. Good match this morning. I was entertained by it. Manchester United is a team in the Women's Super League to keep an eye on. I think with the investment they made in Press and in Heath, this is a women's team that honestly hadn't taken it all that seriously until recent years. They got promoted out of the second division up into the first. And it's been Manchester City, it's been Chelsea, it's been Arsenal as your top teams. Manchester United might be competing, and this year with Heath and Press, that's going to give them a different level. But this is a good squad to begin with. It's not just about go get two American superstars, and now everything's great. It was a good squad that you added talent to up at the top. It's going to be a fun season, and these games are accessible in different ways, I think, for the first time we've seen in this country. You've got the games that'll be on NBCSN. You've got games that are on NBC's digital property. Atta Football, which you saw all over the broadcast this morning, that's a group that is really working to get women's soccer more accessible for people. They have streams on their website. They also have a partnership with our friends over at Fanatis, and you saw Fanatis on the broadcast today. They have some of these FA Women's Super Leagues games as well. You're seeing with the NWSL on CBS, with the FA Women's Super League, with NBC, and with ATA, and with Fanatis. And you're seeing now the French First Division is going to be on ESPN Plus for some games. The overall level of club football on the women's side has changed dramatically in terms of that accessibility. And this is something it feels like the last couple of World Cups we've had this conversation. The national team stuff gets everybody interested. The national team stuff in 2019 got the world interested. But what will take it to the next level is the same thing that happened in this country on the men's side. When it goes past every 4 years, every 2 years, every tournament to every day with a club team that you're following how people are doing in training. You're following game to game to game, week to week to week. You're talking about 30, 40 games a year. That's when things dramatically change. And on the women's side, you've needed that conversation on a regular basis. You're getting that now. You also need accessibility. You need information. You need storylines. You need to know what you're watching for because that'll keep you hooked. That's the next step. What Atta Football, what all these different media partners are doing, it will have, as big as the World Cup has had on the women's game in general, just the rise of the club game, and it doesn't have to be one league, one country. The rise overall is going to make women's soccer so much bigger than it's been. So much bigger than it's been. You look at this last transfer window, John, and this was a number that jumped out to me yesterday. On the men's side, transfer spending was down 25% in this last window. On the women's side, both the number of transfers and the spend was up 35%. Now, it was coming from a very small number to begin with. But in a pandemic, you're seeing increased investment on the women's game. That's only going to go up with more access, with more exposure going forward.
Yeah, and as you were talking, there was one word that popped into my head: storytelling. That was the first thing that I wrote down as you were breaking down what we were looking at this morning and the growth of the leagues. You have to bring in, yes, you're going to have the hardcore fan. Yes, they're going to be interested. They're going to want to see from a United States perspective. They're going to want to see the women's national team players playing in the FAWSL. They're going to want to see them in the NWSL when they're playing and that season's going on. But to bring in the casual fan, to continue that momentum, the storytelling of the players that you don't know, the storytelling of the experience of the players who are coming into those particular leagues, that to me will advance everything going forward and bring in that casual fan and increase the interest of the hardcore fan, because they're getting that access. They're getting all of those pieces of information that they wouldn't be getting otherwise. And it's just the continual elements of the storytelling as well. And you mentioned increased investment. For me, and I will continue to maintain this until I'm blue in the face, I think that if you're a businessman, if you're interested in sports franchises, if you're interested in owning a sports franchise, I think that this is one of those underappreciated assets that we continue to talk about, that you really can make an impact on a bunch of different levels. You can make an impact in your community. You can make an impact in the league. You can make that impact to have those leagues grow. And so I think that those two things for me are what stands out here when it comes to the growth of the women's game. It's the storytelling. You got to hit it hard, and you've seen the increased investment. And I think that those are two things that you really can capitalize on to continue to grow the game and take it to those next steps.
From the ownership standpoint, I got to push back just a little bit on something, because I disagree that the selling point for people coming in is going to be impact in the community. I think that's been the problem with professional women's sports for a long time, is it's been run like a charity. It's not a charity. It's a business. People will invest when they see they can make money, period. That's what it needs to be. You're not going to get long-term investment, because if it is treated as a charity, if it is just to make a community impact, at some point you're going to be satisfied with the impact you've made, and you're going to cut the investment. If you've been donating to a charity for a long time, and they're making progress and they're doing great things, you're going to feel like at some point maybe they don't need your help anymore. That can't be how a business is run. I have to push back on that, because it's something the NWSL has to change their mindset. This needs to be an attractive investment possibility, because it's an investment possibility. Why do people invest? To make money. That's not a bad thing. I feel like at times these are bad words in this game, and it shouldn't be. That's men's, women's, that's anything. You invest to make money. Why do people invest in MLS teams right now? Because their valuations go up and up. And when they sell, they make big money. NWSL, Women's Super League, Ligue 1 in France on the women's side, the Frauen Bundesliga, it's an investment. And I think what will change it to where it's taken more seriously, because honestly, I think Liverpool's treating their women's team like a charity.
Yeah.
They're not investing in it. They're not treating it like a business. They're not trying to make money. They need to try to make money. That is going to affect everything going forward. That's going to give you the footing to be sustainable. That has to be the mentality. And you're getting closer and closer to that than you ever have. On the women's side, the ratings numbers for the World Cup last year worldwide were astounding in some countries. That turned people's heads and say, well, wait a minute. If all these people are wanting to watch and are watching, we need to advertise on that program. We need to, now Manchester United is taking their women's team seriously. That's a big brand. We can get involved on the women's team and invest and get that kind of exposure. Okay, here's a check. That's what changes it. Not the community side, which is great and is very important. And that should be a part of any club at any level. But that can't drive the growth of a business. It just can't. It has to be a component.
No, and I guess that's where, once again, the lack of a modifier in my sentence.
No. This is not a new conversation. This happens all the time, and I'm not trying to pick on you, John. I'm saying
No.
That's how women's sports have been treated. The number one thing can't be impact in the community. No. The number one thing has to be, what's the profit?
Yeah.
And that's not being greedy. That's not being cynical. That's nothing other than, if a business does not make money, it doesn't survive.
Yeah.
If it's not making money, you're not going to put more money into it. The women's game needs more investment. It's not where it should be. The match today was a good match. It can be better. How does it get better? You have better players. How do you get better players? You pay for them, or you develop them. You have to put money into these things to get there. But you also have to see that there's a return on that. And that's always been the thing on the MLS side, because, look, I mean, in my opinion, the Women's Super League, in France, in Germany, any league in the world, the NWSL, they should look at what MLS has gone through and what they've done, because MLS has been the most successful launch of a league in modern times. It took investment and more investment and more investment, and it took time. But it also, there were mistakes made along the way. They learned from them. You're at a point now where I think you're starting to see, okay, they're investing in developing players. The academies are important. Why? Because you're getting a better product. Also, you're creating assets that can be sold. Big from a financial standpoint. You're investing in the product. How? You're allowing owners to spend more money on talent. You're having competition for talent around the world. Okay, these are big things, and you have to have that, because at the end of the day, if it is only about feeling good and doing the right thing, well, that doesn't last. That's not how you that's not how you make a business successful.
Right.
The business has to be about making money, and the Women's Super League, the NWSL, all of these leagues, all these clubs can make more money from their women's team if they treat it right. That's the number one thing. And then they invest more, and then it keeps growing.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing for me. I view the sport as as I've said, I view the sport as an underappreciated asset. And there are always good businessmen who can sit there, understand a business opportunity like you have right now in women's soccer, take advantage of it, grow the game, and at the same time have it as a successful business. And I just think that the fabric of being the community, it should be a part of the overall, not your number one thing, but it should be a part of the fabric of what you're there for, and is a part of your build.
Yeah, that's part of any club. That's got to be the part of every club in the world, because they have to connect to their community to be successful. But there is a component of, okay, we need our community to support us from a business perspective. We need money to operate. We need you to come buy our product for us to continue doing what we're doing. Those things are so important. One thing I think as well on the women's side that I'm coming around to more and more, and I remember having this conversation with Jessica Charman, who's going to join us Monday morning, by the way, on SDH.
Cool.
In Europe, for example, today, I mean, it's Manchester United and it's Tottenham Hotspur. Here in the U.S., it would be the North Carolina Courage and the Portland Thorns. Completely separate brands. I think there is far more opportunity for MLS and the NWSL to come together on similar branding. And I know there's Nike, there's Adidas involved. I know there's different marketing elements involved. But I think it would help grow the women's game, and it wouldn't take away from it. I think in the college, for example, it helps. And if you're not a women's basketball fan, for example, but you're a Georgia fan, and you're going to go to a Georgia basketball game, you're going to go to a Georgia football game, you might go to a Georgia women's basketball game because it's Georgia. If it is something else, if it's called something else, if it's not affiliated, but it is, but it isn't, if it's not marketed under the same brand, does that affect it? I think there's more potential in the clubs being consistent. I do.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't have independent teams that aren't affiliated, but I think in Portland's case, for example, they've done something special where they've built the Thorns brand into something very special. Houston, not as much. Orlando, not as much. Would Orlando be better if it was not treated at times as separate because it's the Orlando Pride, not Orlando City? I don't have the answer. We don't know. We don't have anything to go on. But I think when you look at like a Manchester United, they get an immediate boost by being Manchester United.
Right.
and that's big. And that, I think, is something that leagues and teams here should look at. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see where this goes. But it's exciting to see all this exposure. It's exciting to see all this conversation. It's exciting to see a game on TV, even if we could hear the producer the whole time. I don't know what happened with that.
Yeah.
That threw me off at first.
Yeah, Jason Nix came in this morning and was mentioning that as a part of his conversation with us, in addition to our favorite word for this particular part of the morning,
power.
He says, yeah, as an eminently professional broadcast team, I'm sure you guys are embarrassed for at Barclays FAWSL having the director's mic hot for the entire game.
Yeah.
They send at OSG Nelson to sort their audio issues.
It was weird. Like, I mean, I can understand how it can happen, but, man, that was the whole time. He was even in the countdown to leave the air.
How do you not understand that that's a part of what's going on in the overall?
I don't know.
I mean, no one's calling. I mean, after the first 5 minutes of something like that, traditionally, I've known of every broadcast entity on the planet where a higher up is calling the booth going, you realize the director's track is going out over the air. Fix that right now. And then it stops.
Yeah. I don't know. The one thing that I'll say, and I'm assuming they're doing it as well as many other organizations, you've had a lot of remote production, and maybe there was no way to fix that. You just wouldn't have had any production on anything. I don't know. That probably would have been better. It would have been harder for the commentators. But, yeah, that was weird. I thought it would have got corrected, and it just never did. Very strange.
Odd, strange, and otherwise odd.
All right, let's get into what you guys are thinking about this morning. They can range all over the place. We've got Atlanta Red Bulls tonight, kickoff at 6:08. We've got MLS games tonight. We've got all sorts of stuff to jump into. I know Chris Ashley's already chimed in on Twitter.
He has, and he has his standard list for the power.
Oh, he did pretty good last time with his list. I have a feeling I'm not going to like his list this time, at least on one thing.
Yeah, I think that his list is not. You're not going to like that. Using the hashtag #GimmeDat with a D, Juicebox Parlay with a crying emoji, crying laughing emoji. He said, "This worked so well last time. I'm going to try this again. In order for this Saturday morning to get a 10 out of 10 rim shot, here's what I need. 1. At GVL Triumph win over Tucson.
Okay.
That is at Keno West. That is at 10:30 Eastern tonight. So that's going to be a lot of coffee for the Reedy River Riot. That's 10:30 tonight on ESPN+. 2, a North Texas win or draw over Richmond.
Okay.
Which would help. I think that would solidify Greenville hosting if that does happen.
That makes sense.
3, a Tennessee win over Georgia.
That ain't true!
That's what the man wanted.
That ain't true!
Figured that there'd be some SEC back and forth between you two this morning.
It's just not going to happen. It's okay.
Let's see. We've got, what else is going on today? Red River. We have your standard SEC matchups. But, yeah, Red River and your matchup with Tennessee. Those are the two big ones, I think. Oh, and tonight it's Clemson and Miami in the upstate. That's another one going on tonight. Yeah, that's the primetime game. We're caught up on stuff from this morning. We do have some stuff left over from yesterday.
All right, hold that for a minute. We'll get caught up on the Twitch pitch. If you haven't seen Atlanta United's FIFA video, at least the first part of it is up. They've done a bunch of these each year, and usually a lot of different content. It's a little different this year because you're not able to do it in the normal way. That probably had a factor in some of this. The FIFA 21 game is out, and the ratings videos are always fun. One was released this morning. Eric Remedi admitted he had no pace, which was quite entertaining. Everybody who was rating Anton Walks treated him very nicely, except for the FIFA folks. They didn't treat him as nicely. It was fun. It's a fun video, and I think Shiva had a question about it. Let me find it. Or was it Badger? Can't find it. It was about how the people were grouped up. I'm assuming they put, friends together in general because that's who's going to be talking trash to one another. They didn't want to put people who don't really hang out as much together because then it's just not as funny. You want somebody who's going to crack on Remedi for defending. You want somebody who's going to, maybe crack on Bello for something. You want those elements. So you're putting people who hang out together to do this.
Yep.
That's what jumped out to me about it. So, it was Badger who asked about it, the 3 sets of players and how they were grouped. I think it's just down to familiarity because that's what gets the funny stuff. When people start making fun of one another about it, that's when it's good. Joseph will crack on anybody. I think Jeff Lorenowitz would probably crack on anybody too.
Mm-hmm.
But you need those groups to have some familiarity and have some fun with one another. So it was good. I want to see what else they do with it. I want to see if they try to fool anybody this time around like they have in the past. Those are always good. But I would assume there's probably more. I don't think they shot enough or only enough for a 4 minute video. I'm assuming there's more in the vault here. Other stuff from the Twitch pitch. Chiefs coach Steve says he's looking forward to seeing Moreno. I am too. I think he's going to start tonight.
Okay.
I do think he's going to get the start. I don't know for sure, but I think he's going to get the start just because it's an opportunity to do it. He won't be completely sharp. There will be some miscommunication, of course, but I think he's a good enough player, and his style of play can lend himself to giving this team a boost. And if you can get it on a night where you could use some fresh legs, hey, take it. Burned about the game this morning. Tobin Heath getting the pity treatment in England, getting kicked all game. The girl who kept kicking her finally got a yellow in the 60th minute, then denied a penalty before getting subbed out late. Good times. It's a different style of game. I would assume the refereeing questions come up as well in the FA Women's Super League, that you're trying to get them up to the level of the standard of play, which is a challenge that we've seen here in this country in general. So I'd assume it's the same there, as that league has dramatically grown in recent years. You also have the differences in the way just the game is seen, and what's acceptable and what's not. The women's game and players like Tobin Heath stands out in the women's game because she's a skill player. She's a technical player, and I think maybe pace and power are more valued in the women's game than in the men's game at times, because you haven't had as many of these technical players. So it's, be physical, get stuck in and all that kind of stuff. It needs to change. That needs to change. It's the same thing that we have in MLS. I think it's a very similar mindset. Skilled players have to be protected more. And if they're going to get kicked all game, referees have to take care of that. That's why you have the situation you do with Ezequiel Barco, because they don't want to talk about whatever his injury is, because he gets fouled 5 times per game, and he probably gets kicked another 3-4 per game that doesn't get called. That's a lot of times you're getting kicked.
Yep.
I'm not exaggerating when I say that is Diego Maradona 1990 World Cup-esque, those kinds of numbers. And what happened there? He kept getting kicked on the ankle because it was common knowledge that his ankle was about twice its normal size. So you're playing Germany. What do? Kick, 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 kick. You're playing Italy in the semi. What do? Kick, kick, kick. It's a target. So if skilled players aren't going to get protected properly, don't give the other team any ammunition.
Take away the target.
Don't give them any ammunition. Abby says it's good to see you dry. Hopefully you didn't get soaked too much last night on the high school football. You're the one who decided to wear jeans. That's on you. That makes no sense to me, but I'm not surprised.
I did have a tent in the end zone where I kind of stayed, where the equipment tried to stay as dry as possible, but there were those times where you're having to stand outside for 15 to 20 minutes, and of course, the second you step out from the tent is when the rain picks back up again, and it just turns into a downpour. So, I had that happening all night long, and so that was absolutely fun. But kudos to the crews when you're doing outdoor games like this, and you have nights that are just beyond rainy, like 40 cubits of wood rainy at times. They're a bunch of rock stars, and it's a pleasure to work with them all. But those nights are not fun.
Badger asked about Liverpool's women's team. So did they get relegated from the Women's Super League last year? Yep. Because they weren't taken seriously. It was treated as sadly, it was treated like a community service project, and it shouldn't be. It's a professional team, and the women on that team deserve better than the treatment they got from the club. The club is a very big business that did very poorly by its women's team, and one reason they struggled was because they didn't invest properly, they didn't treat them properly, and you had a number of players want to leave because of that. And this is where you're at. You get relegated. That's not acceptable for a club of Liverpool stature. It just isn't. South Georgia Atlanta United says 3-0 Atlanta starts the run to the Cup tonight.
There you go, Jason.
That's big time. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Oh, and Jason did get his Marcelino scarf. He came home and his Marcelino scarf was there, and he posted a picture.
Very nice. Little conversation about the numbers. Tobin Heath wears 77 for Manchester United. I haven't seen if that was something she picked for a reason or not. There's conversation about why didn't she get 7 or why didn't she get this number or that number. When players come in, and even though Tobin Heath is a world superstar, she's not going to come in and start dictating what number she should get. She shouldn't anyway. If the club wanted to do that, it's a little bit different conversation, but you don't want to take a number from somebody who's had it, who's been at the club for years, just because you're the new big player and on scene. That's not going to go over very well. Sometimes you see players who get traded into a team or join a team, and they'll try to make a deal with somebody who has the number. They'll pay them off. That happens. I don't know what the case was here, so I can't really say. But you're seeing more and more players not just go for the typical 1 through 20 kind of deal. They're going for these different sorts of numbers. Jaime Moreno, when he came back to DC United, he wore 99 after wearing 9 for a long time because I think somebody else was wearing 9. So he said, okay, I'll wear 99. All kinds of different numbers are common. I think 58 is a common number in Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. It just happens. So it's not as big of a deal now, but yeah, and I know, like, Tobin Heath's a big deal, but if she came in and said, oh, you're wearing the number I want, you need to give me that number now, I don't think that's going to go over very well in the locker room.
No. Tobin took 77 upon her arrival. Press took the number 24 in tribute to Kobe Bryant.
Okay, so there's meaning on Press, and we don't know what it is on Heath.
In 3 days following their arrival in September, sales of shirts Heath and Press on the back surpassed the numbers of established male stars such as Marcus Rashford and Paul Pogba.
Yeah, well, you're getting a worldwide, I think, audience as well on that. Pogba's been there for a while. I don't know how popular Pogba is at this point with all the craziness with him. Rashford should be bigger than he is, and I think he'll end up being a big deal. But these are 2 big deals. And again, it goes back to the business. If you sell those kind of shirt numbers and you're bringing in that kind of revenue, then a Manchester United's going to say, well, hey, we could go sign Marta. We could go sign Alex Morgan. We could go sign whoever. Because look at what it does for us. That's a big deal. That's going to help the overall business. That Grant on the Twitch pitch says, 2021 fever dream. Is it conceivable that Glassy could be a legitimate candidate as the new permanent manager? Could a new assistant coach join the first team with Glassy by the name of Jeffrey Adam Lorenowitz? Anything's possible right now. I think that's not likely. And that's not because I don't think Stephen Glass is a great candidate. I think he is. I just don't think that's the plan right now. If he goes on a run and gets this team deep into the postseason with the challenges they faced, that's going to increase his stature as a candidate, no question. He's got the opportunity right now to change that stature as a candidate that no one else has because he has the team at the moment. I think when you hear the players talk about him and talk about playing for him, they love playing for him. That's a huge check on the candidacy list. That's big. I don't think it's the plan. I don't think it's completely far-fetched. Now, Jeff Lorenowitz becoming an assistant, it could happen. I'd like to see him work in the academy, at least first, because I think that his soccer brain, it'd be great to have him talking to the 14 and 15 and 16-year-olds coming through the club. I think he'd be really vital there. And even if he's an academy coach who kind of moves through different groups to get some experience with all the different age groups in his first year, if he chooses to retire, which he might not, I'd love to see him stick with the club. Absolutely. But going straight in to be an assistant with the first team, sometimes that can be a little limiting. And I look at somebody like Ben Olsen in this regard. Ben Olsen's taken just way too many shots at him here lately that I think are unfair. Ben Olsen retired and became an assistant. The coach that came in that year, Kurt Analfo, failed miserably, and it was the second time that he didn't make it through his first season at a club. Ben Olsen went from being a player at the end of 2009 to being the interim head coach at the end of 2010, which is really tough and really difficult. And then he did okay. He did pretty well. There was clamor to keep him. Kevin Payne, who was the CEO at the time, said, we're looking, we don't see him as the head coach going forward. But then they didn't find anybody, and then he became the head coach. And he had been the head coach up until this week. He didn't get that development time as a manager. He was thrown straight into it and had to figure it out on the fly, and oftentimes without the resources to really do a whole lot. That affects what you become as a coach. I'd like to see Jeff or Michael Parkhurst or any other player who goes into coaching have some time to learn and grow away from the spotlight. Yeah. Not everybody is Jason Kreis. Jason Kreis, and maybe you could say the same conversation about him, but he figured it out pretty quick, and he retired, became the coach. I mean, he was playing, took the uniform off, put the suit on the next day, became the manager at Real Salt Lake, and a couple of years later won MLS Cup. And then a couple of years after that got to the final of the CONCACAF Champions League. Since then, it hasn't gone as well for him. But I think you need that time to develop. So I'd like to see Lorenowitz not have to go straight into a first-team assistant role year one. I'd like to see him get time with the academy, get some time to grow as a coach, because it's just a different mindset entirely.
Yeah, no, right there with you. I think that I would love it if once Jeff decides that he wants to retire, that he would stay with Atlanta United and just help out those younger players and become comfortable in his new role of coach and those kinds of things. I'd love to see it, love to see him stay. And yeah, to your point, I'd like for him to be that impactful guy starting off things with the 14, 15, 16-year-olds and working his way forward.
Yeah, I'd just like to see him get a little more time there. One other one I forgot about on the women's products that are getting out there. Thanks, Bart. The Copa de la Reina was on ESPN Plus yesterday. That's one that I did not know had been picked up. I hadn't seen anything about that one. So very cool. I mean, stuff is just becoming more common to watch, the women's club game. And as big as the national team is, as important as it is, we've seen it here personally in Atlanta with MLS and with Atlanta United. The club success can take it to a whole nother level because it's daily. It's a conversation on a regular basis, not just when the national team gets together. Jason Nix asking about Red Bulls tonight. How does Gerhard Struber put his stamp on this team early on? Is he still just sorting his players at this point? He's not even there at this point, Jason. He won't be there for probably 4 to 6 weeks. They talked about that this week, and there hasn't been any conversation about his involvement just yet because he's not there. You know, I mean, there's really not much he can do, and I don't know what the exact process is for getting him in. I'm trying to pull the quote right now. Bradley Carnell, the interim manager, said, connecting with Struber, and this is from the Seeing Red podcast, Mark Fishkin hosts it. The quote is from Carnell, in terms of any working relationship, there's nothing happening. We're excited to get him on board. But it might be 4 to 6 weeks. So right now it's still Carnell in a holding role, which is different than Glass because you don't have the hire right now on the Atlanta side. Glass has got the team because he's the manager for the team right now. Carnell's the manager for the team right now, but you already know who's coming in to replace him. That can be weird. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Jordan 404 says, good win from Colombia last night. 3-0 over Venezuela, if I have that right. That's expected. I mean, Venezuela's not at full strength, obviously without Joseph Martinez, without Solomon Rondon. It was in Colombia, so that's a difficult match for Venezuela. Colombia did what they should do. I didn't get a chance to see that one. I plumped down on the pay-per-view packages for the Argentina games, so I picked the worst game of the batch in this first round. Argentina got the win, which is great, but it wasn't the best game because Ecuador was defensive. Argentina couldn't really break them down enough. The other games had far more chaos. Colombia had a bad injury that I'm glad I have not seen and I don't want to see.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And some nice goals as well. So Colombia, great start for them. On the Twitch pitch, the rest of stuff here, Harmless Bunny says the real question is, did EA give Escobar a high rating in playing FIFA? Man, they should. He's pretty good.
Yeah.
I hope they do more stuff with that. That was fun early on during the pandemic with the little tournament they did. They should make that a regular thing with the EMLS players and the MLS players, and the format was good. You got trash talk in between them. When you can have them all in person somewhere, that's even better. Maybe during All-Star or something you do this every year, but they should absolutely keep that format. That would be a fun thing to do. Let's see. Shiva talking about Remedy on the FIFA video. He's a clown no matter who he's with. That's accurate.
Yeah.
Eric's a fun guy. Okay, what else do we have here? What else do we have on Twitter? Anything else pop up?
Let's see. Tofka had mentioned some stuff about Jeff Lorenowitz, because when you were talking about Jeff, he had mentioned Jeff as well. So let me get to that real quick. And we have USL Championship playoffs starting today. So we've got the juice boxes for that, up-to-date juice boxes otherwise as well. He says, Tofka, here's an interesting, undebatable fact.
Oh, jeez. That's never a good start, Tofka.
For contribution in each of the 4 seasons that Atlanta United has played, Jeff Lorenowitz is the most important player on this team. No one else has been there, been needed, and delivered all 4 seasons. That is wild, in all caps with an exclamation point. Goose comes really close, but he wasn't here in the first half of 2017.
Most important player?
That's how it was phrased.
And it's undisputable?
Interesting, undebatable.
Undebatable, not un or indisputable.
Yes, undebatable.
Well, I can't debate then, so I'm going to leave it. I would like to, but it's undebatable, so I have nothing. I can't say anything about that then, Tofka. I'm going to let you have that one. Just leave it right there. Go ahead. What else?
Well, he goes into Tofka. We got to remember our leagues discussion from yesterday.
Yes.
So Tofka was all in on that part of the discussion. And he says, a league structure question, Tofka's all over it. So
now, to refresh, because, John, you have to remember about recycling audiences and such. And we talk about a lot of stuff. Not everybody heard the league's discussion from yesterday, so they might be crossing their eyes and being very confused at the moment. Let's catch everybody up here. So there is a debate going on in England about B teams being part of the pyramid. Manchester City is pushing for this. Ferran Soriano, their CEO, has been clear in saying that from a development standpoint, they need something more for their 17 to 18-year-olds. What are you watching, by the way?
Montenegro and Azerbaijan.
Yeah, why? They need something more for their 17 to 18-year-olds. They don't feel like they're getting the proper development in a reserve league. So they want them to be part of the pyramid, like they do in Spain, like they do in Germany, like they do here in the United States. There's a lot of pushback because that's completely, untraditional for the English game. You also have the looming specter of lower division teams, EFL clubs, having serious financial difficulties, and some ceasing to exist. And we'll have to wait and see how all that goes. So that's the conversation that has come up again. It's come up many times over the years in England, and it's always been pushed back on very strongly. So now it's up again in light of the potential crisis financially with EFL clubs. So that's where we started the conversation yesterday. Tofka gets excited because he has written many an opus about league structures, and he had what to say.
I think the maximum reach should be League One. I don't want the championship in the U.S. or in England to be cluttered with B-team groups. It does change the nature of the competition, as some clubs have different motivations from match to match. I also think that keeping B teams in League One, in the United States at least, will allow the gap to close between the second and third division, It's admittedly cleaner to allow any team to go up or down, but I think USL Championship gains some legitimacy for its fans with just independents competing.
I disagree on the U.S. side. In the English side, I actually agree with what Topka's saying. I think, at least in the beginning, and partially because this is how you're going to have to sell it, is teams should be limited to 2 divisions below their parent club. So that would mean also if a Premier League team gets relegated to the Championship, then their B team, if they're in the pyramid, would get relegated to the 4th division.
Okay.
In the United States, I think it's different. You don't have the pro-rel situation, first off. The gap between the 2nd and 3rd division is minimal. The gap between the 1st and 2nd division is it's a chasm. It's huge. So I disagree on the legitimacy of USL Championship because their numbers, their attendance, all those things are way up. So I don't think it's hurting the legitimacy. I think you can have high standards on teams that are in that 2nd division. Absolutely. And you want them to field competitive teams, et cetera, et cetera. I think people get hung up on Atlanta United too when they've struggled. When Portland really struggled in USL Championship. Other teams have as well. But they're forgetting Real Monarchs winning the league. They're forgetting Red Bulls too winning the league. You can't leave that to the side. So I think in USL, in a perfect world, you would have promotion relegation between Championship and League One. League One's got a lot of room to grow first. We're talking 10 years down the road probably. But you'd have that, and there'd be no limitation. The best teams move up, the weaker teams move down. Done. Solved. I don't think you need to put a limitation on limiting them to League One. I think right now the people who are pushing for MLS teams, you have to play in League One, that push is coming from either places where they're not paying attention to the second teams and what they're doing, or it's coming from places where the second team is not treated like a true reserve team. It's just thrown out there. It has to be treated like a reserve team and then rise and fall based off the level, based off the ability. That's my thought on it. But I do think in England you're going to need to have more of a buffer. And probably because you're going to have to sell it that way if you're ever going to get this to happen. I think you're also going to have to add a 5th division in the EFL pyramid. Yeah. Because you don't want to put anybody out of the pyramid to add these teams. So the way you solve it is you put 5 in. You don't have the second teams have any portion of the share of revenue. So it's still the same number of teams splitting it. You're not diluting the shares of revenue on TV and et cetera, et cetera. So I think you can make that work, and then it's just the only difference is you have these B teams in that have a cap on how high they can go up the pyramid. That's it. I don't think that should be a problem.
Yeah, Premier League 2 right now in Division 1 is a 13-team league. 11 of those 13 teams are Premier League under-23s. Mm-hmm. The 2 that are not are championship teams in Blackburn and Derby County. So that's what PL2 currently is in its structure.
Yeah, and where do you ever see PL2 games?
Mm-mm.
Like, is there ever anybody talking about PL2 games?
Nope.
Does it do anything for development for these players? How many times do you see somebody go from the Chelsea U23s into the first team in this way? Mm-mm. It doesn't happen. I think having it in the league structure in the EFL would help the development. I absolutely think that would be a smart thing for England to do. Is there a piece in The Guardian real quick to talk about with that?
Yeah, Jonathan Liu said, of Gareth Southgate's 30-man squad, 24 had some sort of EFL grounding in terms of appearances. The starting 11 had more experience of Football League than the Premier League. Put simply, it's an England team that would not exist without the EFL, whether as academy or finishing school as a second chance saloon or last chance saloon. Then he goes into the...
That doesn't make any sense. Like, is he trying to say you shouldn't have the second teams in there?
Yeah, I think
because the second teams are going to play in the EFL. It's just instead of, from a development standpoint, if you're Manchester City, it is instead of saying, I've got Phil Foden. Mm-hmm. Phil Foden needs somewhere to play at 16, 17. He can't play here yet because we're trying to win the league. We're trying to win the Champions League. He's not ready for us yet. But I don't want to loan him to sorry, Colchester fans, but I don't want to loan him to Colchester because they're not going to play him in a position that's going to make sense. They're not going to put him into a spot that, prepares him to play for us. They're going to throw him in and tell him to run and be power and pace and kick the ball long, and that's not what we need. So then they have to go find somebody that would play him from a developmental standpoint, which no. Yes, when you have those teams in a situation, as we've seen with Atlanta United too, their aims are different at times. Absolutely. You're going to play Phil Foden at 16 for your Manchester City B team or your Manchester City U23 team that's in the third division or whatever. And if he's struggling, you're still going to play him. And you're going to have him play in a way that you want him to play for the first team. That's development. That's better development.
Yeah.
So, that's just such an outdated viewpoint. What else is there? Because that's incredibly outdated.
Yeah, he said he references the Ferran Soriano quote that we talked about. Manchester City's chief exec said, "It's a good opportunity to get together and solve these problems. The challenges of developing players in England where B teams are not allowed. We have the development gap for boys 17 or 18. They're taken from us by the German teams who try to sell them back to us for 10 times what they paid. This is mad, right?" And so Lou says the fact that Soriano doesn't see this as mad, as the mad part, says a lot about his concept of the footballing ecosystem. And so it's worth unpacking what his vision means in practice. Maybe a few dozen EFL clubs disappear, no great loss in the grand scheme of things. Those who survive either rebrand as Premier League B teams or fend for themselves in a neutered
Nobody
salary
said
cap.
that. Well, you're going to have to deal with a salary cap anyway because you don't have any money. Nobody said Brentford should re-establish itself as Manchester City B. Like that. That's fear-mongering, in my opinion. That's not what the idea is. Go ahead.
He says, naturally, the result would be a horrible, watered-down product with virtually no value as spectacle or cultural artifact.
See, this is why you'd have to have that buffer because of this mentality, because people are never going to get on board if you have a Manchester City B team in the championship. People would just lose their minds. They'd have to be in League One where not as many people pay attention, and it would be beneficial for a Manchester City B team to go to Cambridge to play Cambridge United or to play Dagenham and Redbridge or whoever else is in one of these leagues. It would be important because then it's something like, wow, this is different. We're getting a Manchester City B team. We're getting this guy, Phil Foden, who's played in the Champions League in some of these throwaway games, and we're going to get to watch this guy who could be the future of England. Yeah, we're going to do that. You don't see Phil Foden. You don't see young, talented players in their teenage years playing in League One and League Two. What Jonathan Lew is trying to sell you there doesn't happen anymore. They don't play there because Manchester City is not going to loan him out. It's not going to happen. And no, it doesn't have to come at the expense of these clubs that have been around for a long time. That fear-mongering side has to stop. It would be a way to develop talent. And the teams would have to be good enough to maintain their spots.
Right. His other point was, what happens to a late developer like Jamie Vardy? What happens to a Callum Wilson or Dele Alli who doesn't come through a Category 1 academy? What happens to an Ings or a Trippier who fails to make the grade at a bigger club and has to start again? This is the footballer as pure resource, as human alfalfa, an asset to be bought up, traded, moved, stockpiled, and junked as appropriate.
I think that's completely ridiculous. What would happen is instead of signing, when did Jamie Vardy sign for Leicester?
Was it 8 years ago?
And where were they at that time?
Oh, goodness.
Were they Championship or were they League One?
I think they were League One, weren't they?
Last time I checked, there's 19 other teams that would be in League One. He could sign with a different team, you know? Like, it doesn't mean that Leicester would have went away. It means they might have been in the 4th division at that point. He still could have signed there. Or he could sign somewhere else. I'll give the counterpoint to that. What happens to those players? What happened to Lawrence Wyke? Lawrence Wyke didn't make it in England, came here to university, didn't make it in the MLS draft, signed with a second team, played his way up into the first team. So instead of Jamie Vardy going to sign for a third division team at the time, when he gets to that point, he might sign for Fulham's U23s or Fulham B or Blackburn B or whatever and work his way up to the first team that way. I disagree with that mindset. I think that article's a bit of fear mongering. It's disappointing because there's legitimate concerns about it from a business perspective, for sure.
Yeah.
But man, that's just, I don't know. I don't see it. We're also watching what this can do in this country firsthand, and I think you're seeing the values of it. The biggest thing is I don't think the EFL survives in its current format, period, because I think a lot of teams are going to have financial issues, and they need something to change that. The Premier League teams, and we'll see if this is part of it, if enough Premier League teams want to push this, if this is part of that rescue package. And who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Twitch Pitch, Sean Vergara, thank you for subscribing with Prime. You are awesome. Questions about Michael Parkhurst, if he was still in Atlanta. He is not. He is in Ohio. He's also part of a really cool fundraising project with an organization that I've known for a long time, Project Goal in Rhode Island, to build a mini pitch. Michael's tweeted that out. He shared it on his Instagram. I reshared on my Instagram story a little bit about it. Go check that out. Michael Parkhurst and Scott Caldwell of the Revs, New England Revolution, are both part of it. And Project Goal is a great organization, similar to Soccer in the Streets. They've done amazing work for a long time. They've been recognized by FIFA. So if you get a chance, check that out. And if you can throw a couple bucks towards Parky's project, please do. But he is in Ohio now and working on that project. Let's see. Jordan 404 said, I see Carlton is en route to Atlanta. Did Indy 11 get eliminated or sent home early? They didn't make the playoffs. Yep. He's coming back home. He's not rejoining the team for the rest of the season. Neither is Kunga, but Kunga's Phoenix Rising are still playing at this point. So they will not be joining Atlanta United. I did see, and it came up on the run-up last night, I think Doug had the quote that some Atlanta United 2 players would be joining for training with the first team based on protocols and being available to do so. Doesn't mean they're going to get signed. There is time to sign them if you want to go down that road, but you could have some of those guys join for training now that the 2 season is over. I guess they'll have to go through the entry protocol with MLS, but that seems to be up for discussion for any player who joins it, so who knows. 5 Takes reminds everybody there's a crazy good sale on Fanatics right now if you're looking to pick up new Atlanta United swag. Training jerseys half off. They've had a bunch of specials here lately. I think as a bunch of new stuff is going to come out for next season. So go check out the team store at Fanatics for all kinds of stuff right now. Colonel asked if Jeff Larinowitz has any coaching certification started, and I don't know if he does. That's a good question, Colonel. It's something that is starting to become more of a discussion with players who are getting towards the end of their careers, getting coaching certifications while they're playing. It's something that needs to be a bigger part of the fabric here, I think. I don't know if he started it. I know that the Players Association has created some coaching courses in the off-season for their members. I know the women have done that as well, and that's been a big point of emphasis. It needs to be a bigger one because that's going to increase coaching education, not just for somebody who moves into an MLS team, but if they move into an academy or they move into just a youth club, it's big. So the earlier you can start, the better you can be prepared. But I don't know Jeff's situation on that directly. I don't know if he started the badges. Abby asked if I have Conti set with music for tonight. We don't talk about music because that's only for wins.
Yes.
So we don't talk about music before the game is over. I'll be joining the full-time report after we're done on TV, so I'll have some input. And depending on how things go, maybe there will be some texts shared to make sure that the music will be set for the full-time report. I mean, it'd be New Jersey, so there's plenty of things to pull from, so it's all good. Ricky Ricardo said, I called the Higuain brothers' move to Miami when that report came out that Beckham had talked to both of them. Hashtag tampering. I didn't see a report that Beckham talked to Federico Higuain. I did not see that. Maybe he did. I don't know. DC's like basically letting him go for seemingly nothing, which why I don't understand, but okay. I don't know how much of a role he's going to play because he hasn't played a whole lot for DC. I don't know if that's because of DC being weird or him not really having the fitness to play a whole lot coming back from a knee injury last year, but we'll see. Sean Vergara says 4-3 Atlanta tonight. I might be on the floor in the booth if that happens, Sean. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me at all. I don't want any part of that. I just a win any form or fashion tonight. I don't care.
Let's see. Juice boxes really quickly. USL Championship playoffs starting today. I'm just going to list your favorites. Mm-hmm. Charlotte plus 159 over Charleston. Hartford plus 114 against St. Louis. Louisville minus 104 against Pittsburgh. Tampa minus 137 against Birmingham. And out west, Reno minus 192. San Antonio an even plus 100. El Paso minus 152. Phoenix a minus 208. Now, my next question for you is, what do we do about Colorado now?
You're going to have to forfeit games. There's just no way around it. They had to postpone another game, so now they've got 2 that they can't reschedule. There's nowhere in the schedule for them to play unless you're going to push the end of the season back for Colorado's purposes. Now, you would be going into an international break there, but it's not fair to make teams that have not had a problem have to play games potentially shorthanded because Colorado had a problem. You don't have what's happening with Colorado if something didn't go wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of surprised that we haven't heard what could have gone wrong. I don't know. But this doesn't happen if everybody's doing everything properly, because most of the teams in the world are doing things properly, and you haven't had an outbreak like this in staff. It's been, I think, 4 players, but up to 9 staff. You can't have that. So what happened? They have to figure this out. I mean, I hope everybody is feeling well. I hope there's not any problems with people really being sick from this. But you can't punish other teams and have to make them either play games on shorter rest or play games during an international break where they could be missing players that could mean where they fall in the standings because Colorado messed up. I think you have to assume Colorado messed up at this point.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to take the consequences from it. But then it comes back to the question of, well, they've had 4 games they've had to postpone. Just because they were able to reschedule 2, why aren't those forfeits? Why did the teams that were going to play Colorado then have to play extra games on short rest because Colorado messed up, which is a valid question. So I don't know. I don't know how they solve it now, but it's solution time because you've got to have a protocol for dealing with this now because there's no fixing it. You can't just reschedule games and everybody be okay with it because now there's nowhere to reschedule the games to. So we will see. Sean Vergara is wanting Sinatra tonight if we win. That's New York, my friend. I don't think Red Bull Arena's in New York. Just saying. Just saying. Also, Sean says, how awesome would it be to have an all or nothing on Atlanta United? Very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Ricky's comparing the Rapids to the Tennessee Titans. Yeah, that's accurate. Last one, Badger says, Red Bull is hazardous to one's health. I'm glad you switched to mate.
Ooh.
It's true.
Ooh.
What?
Sinatra was born in Hoboken.
Oh, okay. No, he qualifies. I don't know if that was known, Sean. But yeah, that would qualify. That's justifiable. I can work with this. Hold on, I have to block a bot.
So block a bot. Happy match day birthday to Jordan Soreski.
Yes. Happy birthday, Jordan. Somebody else's birthday, I think, today. I can't remember. Happy birthday to everybody whose birthday it is on a match day.
Yes.
But yes, happy birthday, Jordan. Happy birthday to all the birthdays today. Hopefully it is a 3-point birthday for Atlanta United fans. We will see how that goes. All the broadcast stuff tonight, 5:30 is pregame for radio on 92.9 The Game on the radio.com app for Fox Sports South. You can still send in questions to 17s@atlutd.com for the pregame segment where we will take questions. So send those in. I think you can actually send in video as well. 17s@atlutd.com. Then game will kick off about 6:08. We'll have the full-time report on 92.9 The Game and radio.com for an hour after the final whistle. I'll be in 2 places, not at once, but in 2 places at different points after the match.
Cloning.
I'll be on TV with Fox Sports South for the post-game show there, and then when that's over, I will go join Mike for the full-time report and wrap that up, and lots of stuff. So hopefully it is a good game to talk about tonight. I think that's a definite because I think it's going to be a intense match between 2 teams that their styles are perfectly compatible for entertainment value. They want to do different things. They're about as opposite as they can be in terms of their approach. So it should be a very entertaining watch and listen. And hopefully you guys get a chance to join all of us who are carrying the game today. Mike on radio, me with Kevin and Jillian on TV, and then I'll talk with Mike after the game, and then we'll talk all about it on Monday in our Overreaction Monday show here at SDH at 9 a.m. Monday. So y'all have a good one. Have a fun match day. 3 points, hopefully, for Atlanta United tonight. That's what we'll all be crossing our fingers for. And we'll be back with you on Monday. Mucha plata, y'all.
Go kick some ass. Mucha plata, y'all.